The Great Debate Series. Best Rivalries.
Okay, I'll start us off. It's two men, but it's also TV show rivalries because it takes a lot of people to put on a show. And that, of course, is Jay Leno versus David Letterman.
It's a great one.
Started when Johnny Carson announced he was going to retire. There was a big, big debate about who was going to take over The Tonight Show. Old friends Jay Leno and David Letterman battled it out behind the scenes. There's a great movie called Late Shift about this fight. As you probably know, Jay Leno eventually won the job. Letterman ended up going to CBS. They battled in the ratings for years. At first, Letterman had him, and then Leno had this interview that took him over the top.
Let me start with question number one. What the hell were you thinking?
Yeah. I think you know in life what's a good thing to do and what's a bad thing, and I did a bad thing. And
As you know, the Hollywood community was shocked to learn that this type of thing was going on, right?
That was Hugh Grant in the Watershed interview for Jay Leno. I can't remember what, I should have looked this up. Hugh Grant, he did something bad. It was involving...
He got caught with a prostitute.
Yeah.
Well, he was married to Elizabeth Hurley.
Oh, right. He was married.
Right. Hugh Grant basically gave Jay Leno the big W in this because I don't think he ever let go of the ratings. He was always number one throughout most of it. Letterman, of course, is, many people's favorite of all time as well. But those guys going back and forth, that was real legitimate rivalry in the sense that I think they had issues with each other. And I also believe that, they were kind of contrasting styles, which is a great part of a rivalry as well. So to me, that's the greatest TV show rivalry, at least that I know of in my lifetime.
It's a great one, but I think I can top it. But the greatest TV show rivalries is actually between two shows who are on the same network, were aired on the same night, and were aired back-to-back with each other, and that's Friends versus Seinfeld. Because in the 90s, these were the two biggest comedies in the United States. And they were so neck and neck on so many different things. It's like, are you a Seinfeld person or are you a Friends person? Kind of determine what sort of humor do you like. Because Seinfeld was written a certain way, and then Friends was a little glossier, a little bit more of obviously the bigger ensemble cast. And they were also darlings in terms of awards. Seinfeld, 10 Emmys, 68 nominations. Friends, 6 Emmy wins, 62 nominations. Now, Seinfeld did have more viewers, but overall, across their entire run, Seinfeld averaged 26.6 million viewers per episode, where Friends averaged 23.6 million. So it's not like they were so far apart. The critics generally like Seinfeld more, but also now that the streaming wars have taken over, these two are still battling it out because streaming services can't wait to get a hold of them. So HBO Max paid $425 million for the rights to Friends, and Netflix came in and paid $500 million for the entire catalog of Seinfeld. So they're still battling, and they've given us iconic scenes like this from Seinfeld.
I met this lawyer. We went out to dinner. I had the lobster bisque. We went back to my place. Yada, yada, yada. I never heard from him again.
But you yada yada over the best part.
No, I mentioned the bisque.
And that could be your cup of tea, or if you love Friends, then you love this.
We were on a break. We were on a break. We were on a break.
So either way, you're either one or the other, though. And maybe in streaming, people have found both. But I was staunchly a Seinfeld person. I barely know what that "we're on a break" even means. Something about Rachel and Ross. But I don't know Friends like I know Seinfeld, or I can quote every episode. There you go.
Totally disagree. There were, 29 million viewers on Seinfeld and 25 in Friends?
26 and 23, yeah.
Right. Guess what the 23 million who are watching Friends just watched? Seinfeld. You didn't watch one or the other. You watched both. And everyone I know watched both.
I didn't.
I don't know what you guys are talking about because, first of all, they were both, you can't be rivals. Like, Friends got its success because it built off Seinfeld. They were, Friends owes everything to Seinfeld. There was no rivalry.
But Friends actually did keep it up after Seinfeld went off the air. So
right, but Seinfeld was the build. And when they built Friends, they're like, all right, let's make a younger, prettier Seinfeld. and let's
Set
put it
in
on
New
right
York,
after.
in
So,
the apartment.
Friends, kind of like it's like Rome and the Maggie and Perloff show. We're not rivals. Friends 100% built off of Seinfeld. The other thing too is I disagree with you two on contrasting styles. Like I know lots of people like Friends and Seinfeld. If I understand, like everybody loves Raymond and the CBS shows or the ABC shows. Those were way different than the NBC shows. But the NBC shows were basically the same writers behind the scenes, and Friends was kind of like Seinfeld light. It wasn't totally different. It's not like Leno and Letterman, very contrasting styles. Friends was basically a Seinfeld ripoff, wasn't it?
No,
I
not
don't
even
think
close.
so. I don't think
What?
the humor.
Not even close? You're
Larry
crazy?
David and Jerry Seinfeld, the humor for Seinfeld and Friends. Do you even know who the writers are? Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's Crane. I mean, they always put
Kaufman,
the three.
Crane, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, the point of view on Seinfeld to me was super obvious, right? It was misunderstandings, neuroses, a show about nothing.
Oh, misunderstanding neuroses. What do you think Friends was?
Well, that was one of the characters, but that's not Joey Tribbiani. Like that wasn't. They had more traditional character arcs. Like the thing about Seinfeld is that the characters never changed and never learned.
Yeah.
That's not what happened on Friends, from what I understand. They were in different relationships with each other. They did kind of change and evolve. That never happened on Seinfeld. That was the point.
So growing up, I was all about Seinfeld. I never watched Friends, and I would argue with my friends, and oftentimes it was like guy versus girl. The guys all watch Seinfeld, the girls all watch Friends, and we would like fight each other verbally, just like, how could you not like Seinfeld? How could you not like Friends? Friends was like that kind of cheesy sitcom with the canned laugh, where Seinfeld was like intelligent, these like comedians throwing out these like absolutely like deep thinking kind of silly situations that make you actually have to like have conversations with your friends about these things. Now, as I've gotten older, me and my wife actually watch Friends all the time, and I like it. It's very funny, but it's super cheesy. Seinfeld was not cheesy. Seinfeld was brilliant. Friends is fun, it's mindless, and it's enjoyable, but there was a battle. My friends, you either liked one or the other. There was no either or.
Now,
I got to tell you, my friends was everybody watched Seinfeld, everybody watched Friends. Because Friends was like had the same like comedy bones as Seinfeld, the same actors, like same like.
I know,
all the funny people came through Friends as guest stars or something. Like it was super funny. The CBS ABC shows were like kind of the cheesy sitcoms. Friends was 100% Seinfeld like. They admitted like we stole Seinfeld. We put a bunch of friends in an apartment in New York and called it a day.
I think it's a big rivalry because I didn't watch both, and I still haven't watched both. So,
I feel like you're like kind of like, oh, I was too cool to watch Friends. Like Friends wasn't like that. Like Friends was popular.
I don't think I was too cool to like it. I just didn't watch it. I watched Seinfeld and didn't watch Friends. Because I watched Frasier and I watched some of the other NBC shows.
Frasier, that's not good.
It actually won more awards than Seinfeld and
I'm
Friends.
very well aware of that. Yeah, that is there's a lot of people who wonder Simpsons never won Best Emmy and Frasier won, or Best Show and Best Sitcom, and Frasier won like 11 times. Anyone who thinks that Frasier is funnier than Simpsons should have their head examined.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people.
But I think Friends, I think everybody who watched, logistically, I think everybody who watched Seinfeld and watched Friends, I think they were the same exact people.
No,
so I know
people
like
are Seinfeld people or Friends people, and that might change in the streaming. Now that they're both so readily available, like Mike said, he and his wife went back and watched it. But I think at the time, you kind of were one or the other. You preferred one or the other.
But you have to admit, logistically, they were the same viewers. It had to be.
No, I disagree.
I don't think it was.
No,
You're saying people left NBC. They were a whole new audience for Friends. It came on right after Seinfeld.
I think there are certainly people who tried to give Friends a chance after Seinfeld and just, this isn't my type of show. And then there are people who, yes, they watched Seinfeld, got into Friends, and then they liked Friends more and were like, this is more my thing than Seinfeld, and then became Friends people.
I don't think so.
My family, my dad, has never seen an episode of Friends. He will quote you Seinfeld to the day he dies, because that was his thing. He loved it. He connected to it.
See, that's the thing, too. Like, so Dan is in the chat, says, George is getting upset. You know, we had Papa saying it was shrinkage. I'm getting all the Seinfeldisms back to me. I don't have a Friendsism. Like, it is different. They landed different at the time, and now I think it's still debatable, like, you know, what's the greatest comedy sitcom of all time? I think people, I mean, maybe you can put more, if you open it up, you can put the Jeffersons and all these other ones in there, but
I think you're going to Simpsons versus Always Sunny, and that's the only two that I would put in that list. But wait, but I would argue, I think you could, I'll bet you a TV historian would say no two shows in the history of television had more common viewers than Friends Seinfeld because they built,
Well, just because they were literally
that must-see
time slot.
TV thing was a big deal. And time slot, and NBC knew it was going to be similar demographics. I think they had the same demographics, young people with like sort of a leaning towards New York. So I'll bet you they had 20 million common viewers, which is very rare.
But that doesn't mean there wasn't a rivalry. Either.
Could easily be a rivalry, definitely. But they definitely, like, Friends exists because of Seinfeld.
But I don't think that Seinfeld necessarily had a young audience. Like, my dad loved Seinfeld.
Yeah, but
right?
they got...
Act probably loved Seinfeld. But
they got similar... I'm sure they had the same audiences. I'll bet you anything they did. Because NBC, like, kind of scientifically did this.
Brian says Simpsons versus Family Guy is another one. We get Family Matters versus Step by Step.
You got those South Park in there also.
South Park versus Simpsons? South Park versus... What?
I think the three of them, South Park, Family Guy, Simpsons. But
Yeah, I mean, they all acknowledge they ripped off Simpsons. South Park famously said,
South Park had
we got it off from
incredible
Simpsons.
full episode of just about how everything was ripped off.
There's a lot of like hospital shows and cop shows that were exactly the same.
A little ER and Chicago Hope.
Wait, one quick thing. Do you guys see the commonality between Friends and Seinfeld? I actually read a lot about this. Friends was designed to be just a little bit more user-friendly Seinfeld. So they were like, as Larry David said, they made pretty people. They made Seinfeld, but with pretty people, called it Friends, right? So 6 people in an apartment, 4 people in an apartment. It's kind of similar, no?
Well, I mean, isn't that also why it could be a rivalry?
Yeah, no, it totally could. But
so that's why I think.
But I don't think they're very different shows. And my recollection of the '90s was everybody watched both shows.